Cool. Well, welcome everyone. We took a couple weeks off. Hopefully everybody did well with exams and graduations and everything else that you're doing. We're back at it again on a Thursday night. And tonight we're going to talk a little baseball, but not just baseball. Ron Colangelo has had a career a little bit like mine, but a little bit more successful with teams than I have been. Um, New York Jets, Florida Marlins, um, who am I leaving out, Ron? Florida
Florida,
Panthers.
Florida Panthers. Yeah.
He's got a really interesting story about his first job, which everybody will appreciate. And now for how long have you been in Detroit now?
11 years.
11 years with the Detroit Tigers, who had the number one pick in the draft last night. And actually, the MLB draft is still going on as we speak. And Ron took 45 minutes uh, out of his time to join us, answer your questions, and talk a little bit about his career in baseball. And obviously, it's funny, like every time we've done this with someone who's worked for a team, Ron probably doesn't have the answer as to when baseball is going to start. Like Mike Golub didn't know when soccer is going to start, although we know that now. And Jessica Berman wasn't sure if lacrosse was going to come back, and Mike Breen wasn't sure about the NBA, and Andy Dolich had a lot of different opinions on things. So as we sit here tonight, we still don't know when baseball will be back, but we do know that the baseball draft is going on, and Ron could probably talk a little bit about what they did with their number one pick or what they're going to do with their number one pick in terms of media. But so Ron, welcome to the group, and why don't you just take a couple minutes and tell them about your starting your career from William Patterson University, or college at the time, through a unique start in minor league baseball, and all the rings you gathered along the way, and how you kind of got to where you are.
Well, it's great to join everyone tonight. It's I always enjoy talking about what I do and sharing the stories and trying to give some insight and taking questions and just talking shop. So I am glad that I have this opportunity tonight, because it does remind me of how much enjoyment I've had in my career, and I continue to have. I still feel that there's a lot more to achieve and to do. So as Joe said, when I was pretty much a senior in high school, I knew I wanted to get into journalism, and I ended up my freshman year attending Arizona State University. And it was an interesting experience. I was only there for less than a year. But I had an opportunity to really understand what a big campus is all about and meet some really cool and interesting people, including Barry Bonds, who was also a freshman at the time. My roommate was a walk-on on the baseball team, so I had the privilege of meeting some of the players back then and really getting an understanding for college athletics coming out of high school. After a year at Arizona State, as Joe said, I went to William Patterson University, which is in New Jersey, and it's in North Jersey. And it's, I called it a mini Syracuse. We had everything at our disposal, an FM radio station, a school newspaper. We even started a cable TV channel. And I put about 4.5, almost 5 years of my time there, and gained a tremendous amount of experience. And being in the number one media market, we were able to establish relationships with the professional sports teams to give us press credentials as students to go and get sound bites, audio sound bites, and to interview players and coaches. And it was an amazing experience for all of us. And I knew from there, I wanted to get into professional sports. And I ended up working in minor league baseball. It was my first job. And I always tell everyone I got my master's degree in sports working in minor league baseball, because you do every job. And that's one thing that I can't stress enough. Be open-minded, especially when you're starting your career. If you're getting into college, get involved in as much as you possibly can, especially if it's an opportunity to do something that you like and what you think you will be a potential path to your career. But at West Palm Beach with the minor league team, we also had major league spring training. So I was exposed to Major League Baseball, and I was able to work with some of the players my first year there. Some of the jobs I had, as Joe really does want me to tell the one story, I would pull tarp if the weather was bad, because we didn't have a very big staff. We didn't have a big grounds crew. So it was all hands on deck. Pulling tarp is an interesting experience if you've seen it on television or at games. You got to make sure you don't get trapped under the tarp. You do advertising sales, you do marketing. I did PR with press releases and reaching out to the media and trying to get some stories on our team. And I also was the play-by-play radio broadcaster. But we also had a very popular mascot. He one time our person who was our mascot's name was Willie P. Bananas. It was an orange gorilla in a Montreal Expos uniform. Well, that person was sick one Saturday. There was an event we had. It was a pretty big deal. It was a Little League parade, and Willie P. Bananas had to be there. And I was the only person that could fit into the costume. So I really took one for the team, but obviously to make sure that Willie P. Bananas lived up to his reputation of never missing an event when promised. So that was a real interesting experience in that I gained a lot of respect for mascots, because I was kicked, punched, pushed, oh boy, you name it. And obviously you've got to keep your cool and continue to high five and hug. And that was one that I shared with Joe. And talk about doing whatever it takes. That certainly was an example of that. From West Palm Beach, I went to the National Hockey League with the Florida Panthers. The National Hockey League is an expansion season for us. So I believe I was like the 9th or 10th employee hired, because they needed PR right away. So I was very fortunate there. It was a tremendous experience. I was there 3 years, expansion, draft, and we even made the playoffs my 3rd year. And then an opportunity came about for me to go work in Major League Baseball, which baseball was my first love. And I went to work for the Florida Marlins. My 2nd year with the Marlins, we ended up winning the World Series, which was my 2nd ring. The first ring, we won a minor league championship in West Palm Beach, which was really cool. Obviously, a lot of fun. And then we won the World Series in 1997 with the Marlins. I don't think too many of you were around back then, but you may watch it. You may watch it on MLB Network from time to time and see this guy run around the field in a suit, trying to grab his manager to do post-game interviews. That would be me.
Who was on that team?
The 97 Marlins had Livan Hernandez, who was ended up being the most valuable player of the World Series, a Cuban pitcher who defected, who was brilliant for us in the postseason, including a 15 strikeout game performance in the National League Championship Series against the Braves. We had Kevin Brown, we had Alex Fernandez, we had Bobby Bonilla, we had Jeff Conine, we had Gary Sheffield, we had Edgar Renteria, who got the game-winning hit in the bottom of the 11th inning in Game 7. So can you imagine working for a sports team? And I think this is what we all aspire to. You're actually trailing 2-0 in Game 7 of the World Series into the 7th inning, and you're thinking to yourself, is this how it's going to end? Are we going to actually lose Game 7 at home and get shut out? Like, how just devastating that would have been. But we tied it and we won it, and it was an amazing celebration. And we had a big ring ceremony and a Gloria Estefan concert at our ballpark, which was Pro Player Stadium. It's now Hard Rock Cafe, where the Miami Dolphins play. And from the Marlins, a few years later, in 2002, I joined the New York Jets, an opportunity to work in the NFL, which I really enjoyed. Getting back home, I wasn't too far from being from Newark, New Jersey. That's where I'm actually from. I grew up in Bloomfield, but I worked on Long Island at Hofstra University with the Jets. Almost 6 seasons. A great experience going to New York and trying to be innovative and creative and raise the profile of the Jets brand. Because in New York, as so many of you know, there's so much competition for the entertainment dollar. You've got the Giants, you've got the Yankees, the Mets, the Knicks, the Rangers, the Devils, the Islanders, and basketball, of course, with the Nets, the Knicks. So, and Broadway shows and theater. So that was a great experience. That's where I met Joe, and we've had a great relationship, friendship for over 20 years now. And I cherish the relationship and those that I was able to build while I was at the Jets. Our head coach at the time was Herman Edwards, who's now ironically the head football coach at Arizona State University. And he took a number of his Jet staff to Tempe, Arizona. So kind of interesting how I went to Arizona State my freshman year. My former NFL coach is now the head football coach there. And then last night, as Joe alluded to, as we transitioned to the Tigers, we drafted our number one pick, the number one pick overall, Spencer Torkelson from Arizona State University. So it is really ironic. And we talk about how it's truly a small world, and it's all about relationships, as you will learn as you continue to grow. But building those relationships are key as you progress with your future, and it'll open up a lot of doors, but also help in a lot of different ways. So I once I left the Jets, moved on to the Tigers, and it's been a wonderful experience here in Michigan. We have amazing ownership, an ownership that also owns the Detroit Red Wings hockey team, Little Caesars Pizza, a number of major entertainment venues, including the Fox Theater, and a number of other companies. So for me, this was a big step in a more corporate climate, where I'm integrated with a number of companies. We work cross-functionally with the hockey team. We're kind of merged into one big unit. We keep separate in our assignments and tasks, but there's a lot of crossover, and we do have a really good relationship in how we utilize our staffs collectively. So that's it in a nutshell. And if you have any questions,
Ron,
be
what's
happy to take those.
the biggest difference in working in different parts of the country in terms of what your job entails?
That's a great question, Joe. When it was interesting when I was in Florida, completely different market, obviously, than New York, and New York different than Michigan. When we were in Florida, it was tough, really, to understand the demographics and what your fan base was, and who your fan base is, especially in South Florida. South Florida, geographically, for those, it's Miami, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm Beach, more of the East Coast. And with the hockey team in particular, being a first-year NHL team, we had to really take a grassroots approach in educating the fans about the game, the rules of the game, and also the media. A number of the media did not understand the game. I'm talking about the basic rules of a hockey game. And for us, that was grassroots. It was also a lot of fun. Having grown up in New Jersey, I was a big fan of hockey, and I knew pretty much all the rules and all the ins and outs of the league. So that was kind of fun for us. And the marketplace, we had to educate them on the sport. And it's South Florida and Florida in general. It's there's a lot of transplants. There aren't a lot of people there that are homegrown fans of teams. Now it's changing a little bit, but a lot of people from all the parts of, mostly from the Northeast, to get out of the cold, move down to Florida. And their allegiances are to, teams from Chicago and Detroit and, New York. And there's a lot of Canadians that have come down from Toronto and Montreal. So it's a fickle market. So it's a different approach to how you're trying to sell tickets and push your brand. And then in New York, more hardcore, obviously, not so challenging to really sell tickets, especially with the Jets. The games are pretty much all sold out. We weren't doing really any advertising. And it's more of a hardcore fan base that, has been established in the marketplace. And it was more so the challenging aspect of it was, and Joe will tell you this, and you hear some of this, was dealing with the media. And there's so much media in New York that's covering your team. And most of the time, I'd say 50% of the time, they're looking to put you on the back page of the tabloids or find some type of story. And now, obviously, with social media, put something out there that's going to get a lot of clicks on the digital channels, but not so much in a good way. So there's a whole different mindset and approach on how you go about your daily business in New York. But that said, it's an exciting place to be, especially if your team is winning. It was unbelievable when we won our division championship with the Jets, that feeling. And then the media got on board and they got excited about it, and we're pretty positive with it. But the minute they turn on you, oh boy, it's not good. It really, really gets ugly, and it's professionally challenging. You've got to really just really not let it get you personally, and just think it through. And Joe can tell you this, and he probably already has. It's a real challenge when things are not good, when your team is not playing well, and you have crisis situations. And then finally, with being in Michigan, the people in Michigan, especially in Metro Detroit, they love their sports. They love their teams. The tradition here is amazing. The Tigers have been around since 1901, the Red Wings since the 1920s. Stanley Cups, the Red Wings have won, I think, 11, and the Tigers have won 4 World Series, and now 121 years. That's really not a good ratio, but the team has so much history, and for me, it's been really I love the history part of the game, and there's so much branding that you can do with the history, and the fans here embrace the history, and it really resonates when we do a special event, bringing out former players that are still with us, and we're really fortunate to have some legends. Though we just lost one in Al Kaline, who was known as Mr. Tiger. So I would say the biggest difference in Michigan is that the fans are with you through and through. They really love their sports, and they take it as religion. So you've got to really make sure, as the communications PR group, we keep that in mind, because we're really under the microscope, especially the Tigers. Of the big 4 teams here, the Tigers, Lions, Red Wings, and Pistons, the media here and the fans here, they expect the Tigers to do everything in a first-class manner, and to really not miss a step in anything we do. So that's kind of a summary, if that covers it. Joe, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to get to. I have more questions, but I'd like to get to these guys' questions. So why don't Matthew, you want to open it up for questions for Ron to get started?
Yeah. First question is from Robbie.
Yeah, so I was wondering, since the draft's happening right now, I was wondering like what your department's preparation is like for the big day.
Well, fortunately, I have a really good staff, because I wouldn't be here talking with you, and nothing's popped up on my screen that, hey, I need to run this by you, or the general manager or our owner or club president's calling. We put together a PowerPoint deck that integrated all of our departments in preparation for the draft. It's not just media outreach, and it's not just social media outreach. It was, how can we, what strategy from a comms standpoint, comms and marketing, can we put together that really push the brand and cross-functionally touch all our departments: community relations, our authentics division, marketing, social media, our digital platforms. We have a show that we stream on our YouTube and Facebook channels called The Word on Woodward. It airs every Tuesday and Thursday. We started it when we had the shutdown. We've been incredibly creative during these 3 months. I'll tell you what, our groups have been amazing. So we put together, Robbie, to answer your question, I think it's like a 22-page or 22 slide deck, and it has our whole plan on what we wanted to do with the draft. And it started with the pre-creative, the videos, hyping the draft. I mentioned the show that we had with draft experts talking about the potential players we might select. We had conference calls, Zoom calls with our general manager and our director of scouting to talk to the media and get some stories in advance. And so yesterday with draft day, we just kind of executed the plan. The draft started at 7. First pick was 7-11, and as soon as we had made our selection, we hit the send button on our social channels. We had conference calls. We obviously put out a press release. We had our general manager go on the #1 radio station, sports station this morning. There was quite a bit that we did last night and today. Today we had a Zoom call, a live Zoom call, which we streamed on our show on YouTube, which was really cool. That was a first with our first round pick and our Hall of Fame shortstop, Alan Trammell, who, if you Google him, one of the greatest shortstops in the history of the game. And Alan Trammell, as I was talking about, legend, still works with our organization in baseball operations. And he had seen our #1 pick multiple times. So we had him on the call because his insights and his voice really resonates with our media and our fan base. He brings a tremendous amount of credibility, and he's so well respected. So that was, kind of a strategy on our part to have his voice out there. But it made sense because he did see the player.
Right. So how has you've talked about how individually based on your city and how the team's success is doing, how your relation to the media changes, but on a larger scale since you came into the league and even with NHL, how has dealing with the media changed, social media especially?
Well, it's 24/7, and it's not so much what can you believe that he wrote that story or she wrote that story or he said this or that. Now it's who is quickest to post something on social, and you're constantly monitoring social. And sometimes it'll drive you a little bit crazy, so you can't let it consume you. And that's why our group, our staff, we monitor social quite a bit just to see what the writers and the media that covers the Tigers and those that cover baseball are saying about us, saying about our industry, but also, just in general about our ownership and some of our other businesses that can affect our team. So it's really changed considerably because you're just constantly monitoring and reading, and that wasn't the case in the past. In the past, I would say maybe 12 years ago, Joe, people would write their stories. You'd wait to see the story posted, and it might get posted late at night, or you'd wait until the next morning and the story would post at 7 a.m. and then would be in the print edition of a newspaper. So you had a little bit of an overnight breathing room. Now, something can get posted at any time. A tweet could go out at any time, and your phone will ring. It will ring, and you will hear the ping of a text message. So it really is 24/7 now, and right through weekends. In media, there's no hey, sorry to bother you. I know it's Saturday at 1:00 in the afternoon during the off season. No, they'll reach out to you. That's where it's gone. So that's changed considerably.
Definitely. Then we have another question from Jada.
I was wondering how your play-by-play experience has sort of helped you in the sports field, the sports business field, and kind of how it's allowed you to craft better stories from a PR perspective.
Play-by-play. I always wanted to be a play-by-play announcer for, I think I started, pretty much my freshman year. And then I got into journalism, but I was a play-by-play on radio for football, baseball, basketball, hockey. So what that did for me, I was a fan of all the sports, but I really had to immerse myself in knowing all the rules and really knowing the rules if I'm going to call the play-by-play. But then really doing the research on, I didn't want to just sit there and say, Joe passes to Fred, who passes it over to Barry, and Barry scores. I wanted to know, just like the professionals did it. I tried to be as professional as possible. So the research, the preparation, the study, and trying to sound intelligent. I would be a really harsh critic of myself. I would record my games, and game over, I pop it into the cassette deck in the car, and I would listen and I go, oh my God, why did I say that? Or I should have said it this way. Or so I started to get a better understanding of how to articulate, how to communicate, how to try to visualize for people, and just be creative with words. So that was something that I was able to do for 4 years. And then I was blessed to get an opportunity to go do it professionally in minor league baseball. And I did that for 3 years. We won a championship, but I wanted you to learn something from me. I wanted you to be entertained by me. I wasn't a screamer, a shouter. I wasn't trying to come up with the next flashy cliche. I was very much straightforward, but I tried to be as informative as possible. Having conversations. I learned so much in minor league baseball about baseball from me just getting to the ballpark early and talking to scouts, talking to player development people who were working for the teams, so I could get a better understanding of why they were there and what their jobs were. And then I could tell those stories when I was on the radio. And it's when I have these opportunities to talk about it. It's just amazing that, when you really think about it. That was a really good question, because I hadn't really thought about how the broadcast has kind of shaped my career, but it definitely has. And I miss it. I had an opportunity to go to AA. It does not pay. And I chose to go more into PR and work for the hockey team, which was the right decision. But that was my goal. I mean, I really wanted to be a play-by-play announcer for a Major League Baseball team or more an NBA team.
Great. That's interesting. Definitely. We have another
I'm
question
glad you
from
think so.
Olivia.
Austin, Texas.
Yes, sir. So obviously currently right now there's a lot of stuff regarding the topic of racial injustice that has been catching light, deservedly. How have the Tigers as an organization been addressing this topic? And what has your role been in these discussions? And also how has your job in communications affected that?
That is a great question. And I don't know if you had an opportunity last night to watch the start of the MLB draft. All of the general managers in Major League Baseball united to support an initiative, whereas they are all donating and have donated dollars to various organizations. In our case, with the Tigers, Al Avila, our general manager, donated to the Jackie Robinson Foundation, but you could pretty much donate to any organization that you wanted to. And all of the general managers last night, you may have seen it, united to deliver a message that Black Lives Matter. They all held up signs, and they're doing it again tonight and Major League Baseball is going to match the contribution, and it's going to be a pretty significant amount. That's really going to go to organizations to hopefully create a difference. And what we've done the last week, we've had some really good conversations internally in our organization and our other organizations. As I mentioned, we're not just the baseball team. We have 12 major businesses under our umbrella, and we're going to start by having conversations, which we've done, and listening and understanding what are the issues. And when you talk to someone that is of color and they start to tell stories, it really resonates. And it's going to start with a grassroots effort to do some things that probably should have been done. I can tell you this too: Major League Baseball has reached out to all the teams, and we have some great leadership at Major League Baseball, starting with the commissioner, and there's a program in place, the Major League Baseball Diversity Fellowship Program for inclusion, and it's great because it's a program that we've participated in, and it helps us identify candidates, minority candidates, and it could be African American, it could be Hispanic, it could be Asian, and to identify candidates for various jobs. And there are so many different jobs on the business and baseball side. So I hope I answered your question. We are being very progressive and aggressive with what is happening in our society. And I'm really proud to be part of it because I grew up in Newark, New Jersey, which is, as a kid, on the streets because of my dad owning a business down there. And I only saw smiles. I didn't see color. And I am trying to teach my kids to never judge people in any way, shape, or form. So this is going to be a positive for all of us moving forward.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you for your question, because we have to keep talking about it. This is not a news cycle. This has to be, there has to be constant dialogue about it. I mean, I think back to some personal experiences that I've had, that gets me a little emotional from my friendships that I've had and what I've experienced in my life. So this is going to be, like I said, this is going to be positive.
Our next question comes from Lucas.
Lucas, where are you from?
I'm from New York City.
New York City.
So Ron, I got to tell you a story before Lucas asks his question. So last year, Lucas came to Yankee Stadium on one of our trips, and Lucas, tell him who you tracked down.
Oh yeah, I was like, you're in the outfield. So if you know the guy who caught A-Rod's 3,000th hit, Zach Hampel, he was just walking there, and I saw him. I was like, no way, it's him. I mean, I saw his YouTube videos, I saw like stories about him, so I got a picture. And like a week later, I learned that was like the first game he hadn't got a baseball in for like 25 years. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So it was Zach
Hampel.
Okay, so my youngest son is he's going to be 10. I have 3 children, and so I think it was last summer or the summer before, maybe it was last summer. My son loves to roam certain parts of Comerica Park, the home of the Tigers, and we kind of let him. You're allowed on this concourse walk area where foul balls will come. Now he brings his glove, and a little pack of kids do this at the games. So he goes down and he comes back and his Tigers cap is autographed. And we're like, who autographed your hat? And he says, Zach autographed his hat. We're like, who's Zach? And then he explains, oh, he's on YouTube all the time. And he collects foul balls and this and that and the other thing. And so my son who knew who he was, and I kind of didn't know who, I whiffed on that one. I didn't know who he was. But he's got a Tigers cap, and it's an orange bill, and there's the autograph. So we have something, we have a story in common there, somewhat.
Yeah.
Back to your question.
So, sorry, my question was going to be about so I mean, early 2010s. I mean, I remember watching the Tigers a lot. It was a very good team. But Mr. Ilitch was putting a lot of devotion to winning a World Series because he hadn't won one in a long time. So what's that transition been like after his passing into a new era per se?
Great question, and unfortunately, Mr. Ilitch, he a ball player himself. He came through the Tigers system, but he had an injury, and back then, surgeries didn't get you back on the field right away or even at all. So he had to retire. So what he went ahead and did is opened up a pizza, pizzeria, a pizza place. Yep. He borrowed $10,000 to open up his first Little Caesars, and now it is a global company, third largest pizza chain in the world. So that injury set him on his path to success and then to one day own the Tigers. And I was really fortunate to have known him. What a tremendous, talk about loving the team and wanting to do things right for the fans. The ballpark is evidence of that, the way it's so fan friendly and family friendly, with a Ferris wheel that we have. We have a merry-go-round kids area that is one of the best in all of any ballpark, and just the whole atmosphere. And then very passionate about putting the resources into the ball club, into the payroll. And we had some great runs. Went to the World Series in 2012.
2012, yeah.
And went to, with Mr. I, we went to he went to the World Series twice, but lost twice. We went to several American League Championship Series, but we just couldn't get, the World Series trophy for him. And, kind of broke everyone's heart. And when he passed away, we were fortunate that the team stayed within the family, and our new CEO chairman is his son, Chris Ilitch, who is as fiery as his dad. And I love his quote, "The apple doesn't fall far from the tree," in wanting to win. But he's taken a different approach. And here's where I'm going to answer your question. Where Mr. I was, win now mode, because of his, he had gotten up there in age. And we call him Mr. I, obviously, from Mr. Ilitch. And he wanted to win. But we didn't do that. And so Chris wanted a different direction, wanted to build from within first, a different approach. So there's been a transformation of the franchise. And as you've, may have seen the last 3 years, the Tigers have lost we've lost over 300 games. We've had 3 very difficult seasons, but we've been able to stockpile some great draft picks and players. We've traded some of our star players to acquire younger players. And right now we have the number 5, 5th ranked minor league system in all of baseball. We picked number 1 last night. We picked number 1 in 2018, and we are on the cusp of becoming a perennial powerhouse. I'm not just trying to spin you on that one or sell you tickets, but we have a great foundation of incredibly talented young players, impact players, pitching, which we have a stable of thoroughbreds, and we've got some really good, potentially superstar players at that are position players. So we've also done some amazing things too in just about a 3-year span with innovation and technology. With you've probably heard about Rapsodo and Driveline and all the tech that a number of teams were kind of ahead. The Astros, the Cubs a little bit of the Dodgers, but now it's much more level playing field. But we've gone above and beyond because of Chris Illich, who wants to provide those resources and tools. We've beefed up our analytics department. We've added more scouts. We've added more international scouts. So our infrastructure is really strong. It's probably the strongest it's been from top to bottom. And what our philosophy is this: what we can't develop, if there's any pieces that we need, I should go in this direction, a free agent here or there, then we'd be willing to, potentially make that investment in a player. But we want our players to be homegrown, and we want them to be Tigers for a long time. And there's a lot of excitement as to what's happening. So you might think back when, you see the Tigers back in the playoffs and go, oh, now I see what he was talking about. But we don't want a one and done. This isn't just let's win one for the Gipper here or just win 1 year. We want to have sustainable success like some of the teams did back in the 70s, the Dodgers, the Reds, and the Yankees when they won their 5 straight. So yeah, it's exciting. I'm like, we've been working on a project that it's kind of PR related, but we've been putting together a recruiting video because there's only 5 rounds in this year's draft. Because of the pandemic, we usually have 40 rounds. So what's going to happen 48 hours after the draft, there's going to be a signing period of all undrafted free agents. So players who make themselves available from high school and college, their names are going to go into a database, and then each club can just start picking up the phone and making offers. And it's going to be a free-for-all frenzy. Obviously, you've got to have done your homework to identify the players you want. You've got to deal with their agents. And what we've done is we've produced a recruiting video. I think it's about 7 minutes long that talks to and speaks to and gives all the video images of what we've done the last 3 years to show you how we can make you a better player and put you on the path, the path to the big leagues.
Cool. I think we have a couple more, Ron, before we let you go.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, we've
You're welcome.
we've one from Keon. A question.
Keon, is that Tennessee?
Yeah, Tennessee. So I grew up being a diehard hockey fan my whole life, and this year, in my opinion, the Stanley Cup is the most historic and hardest trophy to win out of all sports. And this year they're doing the 24-team format, which is the first time ever in the expansion era with them after the original 6. So there's players like Matt Duchene, Marcus Johansson, and Max Domi that are saying they're not going to play for this because it's not the same. It's the value is decreased and all that. So I want to know, is this more of a player standpoint or more of a management standpoint to hold the playoffs in this style instead of postponing it to next season, like the lockout in the early 2000s?
I can tell you this from, talking to our colleagues at the Red Wings, and I'm very close to them. Now, the Red Wings are not part of this tournament because they had one of their worst seasons in the history of the franchise. But they, like us, the Tigers, are building back with drafts, and they just hired back Steve Yzerman to be the general manager, and he's had tremendous success in Tampa in building that foundation, and he's turned them into a perennial winner. There's been the same narrative with baseball. There's been players who have come out, Mike Trout and Clayton Kershaw, who are a little apprehensive about wanting to go back to play for health and safety reasons. As far as is the I think the majority of the players absolutely want to play. And I think that once they start playing, and especially knowing what's at stake, the NHL and the NBA played pretty much their entire season. To then just say, okay, we're going to go into a tournament and start playing in the playoffs for the championship, I think there's a lot there to that. I think there's going to be a lot of motivation. And once they get going and once they start playing that first game and being back on the ice and all, I think it's going to be very exciting. And I think the players will certainly, if any players had any doubts, I think they'll come around and say, okay, this is what we do. This is what we enjoy. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch for both the NHL and the NBA, regardless of, where they may be playing. And that's going to be, the only drawback that the home fans are not going to be able to see their teams.
Great, thank you. And then our final question comes from Jack Adams.
Hi. So I was wondering what your main target audience is and also what you've done to broaden that audience, whether it be like youth or other initiatives.
Well, our demographic here with the Tigers is skewed 50 and older, the majority of our fan base. And that's a little concerning. But we look at, trying to cultivate fans of all ages, all demographics. But I will tell you that, in our surveys and research, it's a little alarming how the percentage of fans are 50 or older. Now, granted, those are the, those are the fans that are going to have the most discretional income for the most part. But we have to do a better job, not just the Tigers, but MLB is doing the same as an industry to cultivate younger fans. And how do we do that? Well, we get out in the community. We promote the game. We get kids playing baseball, playing t-ball, playing Little League, having fantasy camps, or not so much fantasy camps, but baseball camps, which we had great success in last summer. The Tigers had baseball camps. We have RBI program, and just getting kids to play baseball and being smart in marketing and targeting the mom who at times may be the decision maker in the house. Maybe a mom is a single parent, and we have to be very, very smart in trying to promote our game to everyone, and that's a real focus. So we think we do have something for everyone at a ball game, and it's just a matter of how we can connect what we're offering to the right audience, which winning really helps, obviously. winning cures all.
Thank you.
Oh, you're
Ron,
welcome.
you have, before we let you go, you have any parting thoughts for everyone?
Well, I want to say this. I was a big sports fan from the time I was 8 years old, and then in high school I got my first typewriter. And so I'm going to try to just reflect back to when I was your age and at your stage of life. And I was not really sure what I wanted to do, but I did think about it. And I went to, like I said, to school for journalism, to college. But if there's something that you're really passionate about, try to learn about as much as you can about it. See how you can get connected to it. Whatever it is. And if it's not sports, that's okay too. I mean, it could be whatever it is for you. Learn as much as you can. Be a good listener. I always listen first, even at this point of my life, because I don't have all the answers. And, there's times where I like to process some things before I give my opinion. I don't like to just talk for the sake of talking. But get involved if there's an opportunity now. If you're still, are you all seniors? I'm sorry, I might miss that.
And they're kind of all over the place, junior, senior.
Okay, good. But if there's an opportunity now to get involved in whatever it is that you like, whatever sport or whatever it may be. But when you get into college, try to get involved. Find that time. I juggled classes. I was involved with the school newspaper, radio station, TV station, and I had a part-time job because I didn't have a lot of my parents didn't have a lot of money. I mean, they took care of me and all, but that money was my money to do what I wanted to do. So, yeah, but really, take a deep dive into what it is you want to do, and don't let anyone tell you you can't do. I came from a situation where my parents did not go to college, but I was determined to go to college, and I got involved, and doors started to open, and build relationships. Like having a connection to Joe is a tremendous relationship. So just follow your dream for sure.
Well, Ron, we hope the next time everybody hears your name that there are actually games going on other than sitting in your car. And by the way, wherever you are, it's amazing that it's still light at 9:08. I don't know how that happened.
Everyone thinks that Michigan is in the central time zone, and I don't know whoever created the time zones. I think they missed this because it should be, it's light out, and it's like when we have home games, it'll be 9:30 and it's still light out. Whereas most places it's pretty dark at this time.
Pitch black
But
out.
the answer to the question that wasn't asked, there will be baseball. The commissioner was definitive last night. We are going to play this season, and our manager, in talking to him about a week ago, Ron Gardenhire, he said if we play 80 games, if we play 50 games, his first speech to the team is we got a shot. And that's the case with every team. So that's, it kind of gets you a little excited, regardless of, what your payroll is and who, what superstars you may not have. You just never know. And we could have some fun this year. And that's how you have to look at it, because working in sports should be fun. It's not all the time because it is very stressful, and it's incredible. It taxes a lot of your time, personal time. But at the end of the day, I'm doing something that I loved from the time I was a kid. So I've been really fortunate and blessed.
Cool. Ron, thanks for joining us. Everyone, once again, thanks for joining us again this week. We'll let you know early next week who our guest is going to be for next Thursday. In the meantime, enjoy the weekend, stay safe, wear your masks if you're going out and you're supposed to be in places that you are. And hopefully by the time we reconvene next week, we'll know a little bit more about baseball like we do about the other leagues. But once again, Ron, good luck with the rest of the draft and enjoy your weekend. And thanks for joining us tonight.